Welcome back to the channel and thanks for tuning in. Today we'll be looking at the top 10 worst adaptations from books to the big screen. I grew up reading the X-Men comics. They were my absolute favorite. I watched the cartoons and loved every minute of them, which is why I thoroughly hate what Fox has done to my beloved mutants. To be fair, the very first X-Men movie has to be given some credit for pulling off a decent big-budget comic movie at a time when that simply was not being done. And 2017's Logan is exempt from any of these criticisms because that movie was just plain badass. That all being acknowledged, every other X-Men movie has been complete garbage. The history, the lore, damn near everything that came before, all of that is ignored or shat upon. I like character-driven stories. The biggest crime of these movies is poor characterization. The X-Men have decades of complex, interwoven personalities and relationships that one could draw from. Virtually all of this completely ignored. Plus, everything done to date can easily be summed up as a bunch of Wolverine backstories, oftentimes wildly contradictory, with just a little bit of bastardized Dark Phoenix saga thrown in every few movies. I don't need another Wolverine origin story. We've seen all 8 of them already. Stop it! The other awesome X-Men characters, besides Wolverine, well, hey, look, they're in there too, sort of. Cyclops, he's an unlikable straight man douche who's there simply to get cucked and killed off. Rogue, let's smooth away all her badass rough edges and waste her time in a silly CW love triangle. Angel, he shows up a few times, somehow playing the same guy, but also not the same guy. Wait, wasn't he one of the first X-Men? What's this Johnny-come-lately, never on the actual roster bullshit? Basically, everyone that's not named Logan, Wolverine, James Howlett, or Magneto is relegated to B-story filler. Now, one could argue that that's what you need to do to bring a comic book to film. Okay, let's stipulate that for purposes of this discussion, but just to be clear, you are saying that in order to make a good movie, you have to make a poor adaptation. That's fine, whatever works, but it doesn't alter the fact that the movie ends up being grossly unfaithful to the source material, and thus a bad adaptation. Final note, everyone seems to love First Class, or at least to give it a pass. That movie sucked. It had so much silly crap in it. I mean, Banshee's wings hustled clumsily in. Yes, Banshee has wings in the comics, but it made no sense just to throw wings on the guy who could shout loudly. Kevin Bacon as Shaw, that wasn't Shaw. Emma Frost, Darwin getting killed off like he got killed. What the hell? Holy crap, was this a missed opportunity. Wanted was such a good graphic novel. It was original, it was violent, it was badass, it had superheroes and supervillains in it. Then along comes that steaming crap in a film canister movie. The screenwriters took a tiny sampling of skimmed surface-level elements from the source and then made up a bunch of silly Hollywood shit to fill in all the gaping holes. If you want to make a vapid, action-heavy, McAvoy, Jolie thrill ride type of movie, that's cool. Some mouth breathers really get off on that crap. How else do you explain the Fast and Furious franchise? But why attach it, however loosely, to something truly great, thereby tainting any future efforts to make that wonderful graphic novel into an actual good film later on? What you ended up with was a generic, silly, damn near unwatchable film that heaped on style at the expense of substance, and managed to screw up that style as well in the process. What was that garbage with the curving bullets? How does McAvoy not end up with shattered shin bones after this scene? See, it looks cool, but don't actually think about what you just saw. That'd ruin it. What besuited Hollywood mid-tier movie exec thought this would be a good movie? Apparently, I'm wrong. It was Mark Miller himself. Damn. I absolutely love his comics, but damn. Reading this interview makes me doubt his sanity. Then I think of Kick-Ass and Logan and think maybe he learned from his mistakes and was just being upbeat and defensive during this particular interview. This movie had very little to do with the book. It was a shiny movie with a great-looking cast. There was the co-ed shower scene. It introduced Denise Richards to the American viewing audience. It had Doogie Howser in it. And lately, it has been getting some recognition for being a cleverly disguised satire railing against fascism or militaristic societies or something. What it didn't have, though, was dudes in power armor. It also didn't even have the barest hint of sane combat tactics. In the book, Starship Troopers, Heinlein explored the impact future tech would have on the military. He detailed small unit maneuvers like dispersion, movement, formation. He included techniques such as bounding overwatch and then scaled these things up to the range and power of these suits. He also gave the same treatment to the broader aspects of large-scale tactics and battle strategy as well. So then along comes director Paul Verhoeven, who was unable to get past chapter 2 of the book without getting bored. No, it's fine. I will give it the showgirls treatment. And as far as giving Verhoeven and Starship Troopers credit nowadays for being a smart, self-aware satire not really appreciated by critics and audiences at the time that it came out, sure, possibly true, but still, crap adaptation. Brief pause here, just to remind y'all that if you like the content, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out a lot. And now, back to the list. I love Greek mythology. All mythology, really. Ever since Dungeons and Dragons, Deities and Demigods, it was one of their manuals that went into detail about the various gods and various pantheons. Fascinating. That's where my love of all things mythology took off. So, take all that rich background, wonderful stories, and interweave it in a young adult Harry Potter-esque type story. I'm in, 100%. Instead of amorphous Voldemort, have the nebulous hidden threat be Kronos, jilted Titan father of Zeus, banished to Tartarus, trying to escape. Sounds great. But this movie bastardized everything. Also, these young demigods in training at this series' version of Hogwarts, God Camp, or whatever they called it, why didn't these kids brush up on Greek mythology, or in their case, family history? There's one scene where they enter a greenhouse, find a bunch of realistic-looking stone statues of people in poses of terror. My instant thought is, oh, hey, look out for Medusa. Better prepare accordingly. Meanwhile, the children of Greek deities, they stumble around lost and baffled as to what's about to pounce on them. Now, it has to be said, I have to give the movies some points for having Alexandra Daddario in it. More movies should do that.
It's the same two clowns who've been trying to sex Michelle every which way from Tuesday. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I've been trying to sex you every which way from Tuesday myself. I'd be crazy not to, Michelle. You're a very beautiful woman. You have crazy witch eyes, and I dig it.
Hollywood, wanting to capitalize on post-Lord of the Rings fan fervor, went digging into books of that genre for more material. They found ERAGON, unfortunately. The end result, a completely shite movie. It was rushed, bland, emotionless. They turned the book's plot into a cliched hero's journey story with nothing new to add to the formula. They cut out major facets of the story that were inconvenient to the budget. Wait till the audience sees all the elves and dwarves, just like in those damn Hobbit movies. Oh, what's that? Too expensive for dwarves and elves? Alright, screw it. Cross their parts out of the script, write in just some dudes. The audience won't care. But sir, the female lead, she's an elf. Whatever, man, we'll just cast a girl that looks kind of elfy. It's all good. The absolute best thing about the ERAGON adaptation is that they stopped at 1. No attempts have been made, as far as I'm aware, to destroy any more of the related books in the series, and for that, we should all give thanks. These were really popular books, very well written, the kind of fascinating stories that make it hard to put down. Exactly what I hope for every time I start in on a new novel. The DaVinci Code garnered a lot of controversy from religious types who apparently think that God and Jesus are fragile little snowflakes that need the help of earthbound busybodies to defend their all-knowing, all-powerful personas and their heavenly reputations. Hollywood naturally wanted to capitalize on all the hype. To do so, they wrote a screenplay that is dull and plodding, especially when it's contrasted with the kinetic, fast-paced nature of the book series. They abridged the hell out of that fantastic plot, changing the story into a weak shadow of what it originally was. They cast Tom Hanks, normally a bulletproof move for any movie, just really not for this particular action thriller formula. And they didn't have a talk with him about his hair before principal filming kicked off. I mean, what was he doing? Was he channeling Nicolas Cage? That was a weird look for him, right? I will give credit where credit's due, however. Casting Audrey Tautou. Great job casting her. I've had a super crush on her since Amelie. Fabulous actress, too. She was the one thing that worked. So, of course, they nixed her from the sequel. The sequel, right? Even though the book was the prequel to DaVinci Code? Whatever, the audience won't notice. Oh, hey, did you see? We fixed Tom's hair in this one. So that's good. Interview with the Vampire was a big hit and exposed the film-going public to the work of novelist Anne Rice. Yeah, it had its problems from a book standpoint and wasn't exactly a good adaptation, but it was a successful Hollywood venture. Warner Brothers had the rights to all the books in the Vampire Chronicles series. When that contract was about to expire, they hastily rushed to get something on screen quick so as to retain the film rights. And what was the result? Queen of the Damned. I was a huge fan of Anne Rice's books at that time. Silly, young, naive lad that I was, I actually got excited at the thought of Queen of the Damned coming out as a movie. I used to be a lot more trusting and optimistic about Hollywood. The producers decided to smoosh the Vampire Lestat and the Queen of the Damned together, cutting out all the meaty, complex stuff that really made the story good, and leaving in just the glitziest, silliest stuff. And the inconsistencies with the first movie? Whatever, no one will care. The amazing cast of Interview with the Vampire, when asked to return, were all like, yeah, nah, pass. Every single aspect of this movie was a triumph of style over substance. What's that you say? Plot holes and completely mischaracterized actions that make absolutely zero sense? Oh, well, hey, look, Stuart Townsend in leather pants. And did you see Aaliyah's midriff? Dune, the sci-fi novel written in 1965 by Frank Herbert, is considered a science fiction classic. Quite a few directors tried to adapt it for the big screen, but it took weird-ass director David Lynch to actually pull it off. Lynch's art house style of movie making caused a lot of friction with the studio that just wanted him to make the next Star Wars. I saw Dune when I was just a wee lad, and I liked it. Even after I read the novel and saw how much was jumbled around or cut out completely, I still retained a fondness for the Lynch movie. It has a lot of problems, and it's a really poor adaptation, yeah. That being said, I still like the movie. Maybe it's childhood nostalgia. The book is so expansive and complex that there's no chance anyone could possibly pack all that into a single film. Lynch ended up just lightly skimming most of the major plot points. Here's hoping the new Dune reboot does a better job. That is, of course, if it ever actually comes out. The delays and ever-retreating release dates are a little bit discouraging.
No. You'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be.
World War Z was such a good book. I had some really enormous trepidation when I heard that they were turning it into a movie. The novel's narrative structure doesn't really seem amenable to the Hollywood formula. It's separate scenes scattered throughout a zombie apocalypse, occurring planet-wide and spanning years and even decades. There's no single protagonist, no recurring heroes. Hollywood considered these problems and they came up with a solution. They just completely ignore the source material entirely, tear out the very heart and soul that made World War Z such a good book. But what to fill all that empty space with? Well, the audience can gape in awe at how great Brad Pitt's hair looks. Also, they can throw in an obscene amount of CGI, to the point that most of the action scenes just look like really silly, bad cartoons. Altered carbon. Yeah, they altered it into shit. Which is technically an organic material, the definition of which is a compound containing carbon. Therefore, yeah, that makes sense. I had that mixed feeling of excitement and fear that book readers are familiar with when they hear that one of their beloved novels is going to be translated to the big screen. I absolutely loved the novel Altered Carbon and its sequels. Richard K. Morgan is the effing man when it comes to gritty cyberpunk detective stories. Another reason for excitement, it was going to be a series for Netflix, meaning that they weren't going to try to shoehorn that awesome plot into some 2-hour feature film. The first season was pretty damn good. I had some issues with some of the story revisions and annoying inaccuracies, but overall season 1 was a solid effort. The biggest problem was that they took envoys and turned them into weird guerrilla kung fu shamans living out in the forest or something. That's simply not what they were. Envoys in the books were agents of the big evil galaxy-wide government. Being set in a relatively hard sci-fi universe, humans are unable to travel faster than the speed of light, and issues of time distortion start creeping in the closer you get to light speed. So in this situation, it would be impossible to exert imperial power over colonies located decades or even centuries away. But through the technology of quantum entanglement, though, instantaneous transfer of information is possible. So the government can send strongly worded communications to misbehaving colonies, right? But they can do so much more. Technology in this story has advanced to the point where human consciousness has been digitized, so it's able to be copied, stored, and transmitted as information. Envoys were like super spy, super commandos who had special training that allowed them to operate alone or in very small groups. Finding their minds transmitted across the galaxy into a new body, they had the skills to instantly blend into any population, absorbing and emulating the speech and behaviors of the native population. In the books, the most terrifying threat the central government could make to a distant colony misbehaving was, we're sending an envoy. They were the ultimate or else measure. The TV show ignores all of this and instead makes envoys weird, low-tech freedom fighters doing capoeira in the forest. I don't know. Also, the whole Quellcrest Falconer thing, that was completely overblown and unnecessary. She's in no way that big a part of the actual story. Most of the issues that got me to put this at the top of this list for worst adaptation occur in season 2. The few things that I mentioned that were changed in the first season, season 2 took everything wrong and turned it up to 11. They focused on all the silly shit that they pulled out of their ass for season 1. It was unwatchable. I literally stopped watching an expensive sci-fi modern series. I watch everything. It takes a very strong negative reaction from me to get me to stop viewing a show. And that does it for today's video. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be coming up with more intriguing and interesting stuff in the very near future, so stay tuned.